Welcome back to a little bit of cheese, your daily bite-sized Wisconsin sports podcast. I'm your host, Cody Depius. That's Sam Douglas, and we got a whole lot to cover today as a huge weekend for college football and NFL, and then we got the NBA starting up this week. So we're kind of going to go through it. We got a couple of fun segments that Sam, of course, came up with because he's got the creative mind here in this duo. But I give a thumbs up. He's always got the good stuff going. But Sam, how's it going today?
It's going well. Big weekend, fun weekend in the sports world. We got a World Series coming up. We got a basketball season coming up, and it's a heck of a weekend to be a cheesehead too. So we're doing well. It's a good Monday to be out here.
Yes, it is. We'll start at the top of a little bit of cheese with our cheesehead fandom. The Packers, that was a really fun game. That's one that I'm going to remember for a pretty long time, I think. And of course, it was almost poetic that Brandon McManus was there to make the kick right at the end of it. So I'll give it to you right away. I want to hear your overall thoughts of the game, what you think went right, what you think went wrong. But I kind of just want to hear your perspective after a big Packers 24-22 win at Lambeau against Houston on Sunday.
Hey, we got to start at the top. Last week when we closed the podcast, I said Houston, we've got a kicking problem. I thought Narvison was going to miss the game winner, and we got ourselves a kicker. There was nothing in my body that said that we are going to have a kicker hit a game-winning field goal, and darn, it was beautiful to see. McManus shows up
Mm-hmm.
in Green Bay, wins us a game. That was awesome. Got to start there. Next up, defense, dude. CJ Stroud at 86 passing yards. That's awesome. Huge day on the defense. These guys are locked in. Not sure if it was a good thing or a bad thing that we turned it over three times and still needed a game-winning field goal to win the game. But Jordan Love's looking great. He's making dots. Eric Wilson, huge day.
Yeah.
Huge stick in the backfield on that screenplay. Two other sacks. Rashawn Gary came alive. Kenny Clark came alive. Dobbs is here. The boys are firing. Yeah, holding CJ Stroud to 86 yards. This defense they might just be everything that we want them to be.
Yeah, I think they really were. And Eric Wilson stepping in after Quay Walker went down with what I think has been named a concussion. I actually didn't hear or see. Yes, it was a concussion, is what they're calling it. So we'll see how long Quay Walker's out. But Eric Wilson stepping up in his absence was a huge playmaker in this game. He had two sacks, he had a couple of pass deflections. He just looked really, really solid all game. I think he was a big X factor. And I kind of talked about it on Friday. I didn't read into it last Monday when I came up with my headline prediction, which I thought Stroud was going to stifle Green Bay. There was no Nico Collins. And I think the absence of Nico Collins is definitely felt here by Houston. But I think you made a great point there. The Packers pass rush, where you saw Kenny Clark get in the backfield and Rashawn Gary as well. That was really the big difference. Houston's offensive line was not able to keep up in this game. They didn't give Stroud a whole lot of time. This is probably his worst passing game in the NFL so far. And Green Bay, you can look at it as a bad thing that they turned the ball over three times and that on defense they didn't have any turnovers. But honestly, I think you take that as a positive as a Packer fan because there are going to be more games than not. You would think that the turnover differential is not going to be -3 for Green Bay. And they just beat a really solid team. And the way that I'm looking at this win is this is a really good team. Yes, you were at home, but however you win this game, you take it. And you saw the improvements, at least in the kicking game. We can all kind of exhale and take a deep breath because that was the biggest, most glaring issue that we had talked about for the first 6 weeks of the season. Now I think we can almost say that it's not. I think McManus is going to be a very comfortable under 50-yard kicker, and that's really all that Green Bay needs. Anything outside of 50, you can let Love sling it. I don't care. You don't need to try that kick over 50 yards. And even if you do, he's probably got a 50% chance of making it. And at a coin flip over 50, that's pretty typical. But I think there's a lot of positives to take away from this game, highlighting what you did as well, Sam. But I think I have a lot of problems with the way that the coaching was kind of taking over in this game, especially in that fourth quarter on that final drive there. They let a lot of time run off when I think they could have been running some plays. You have at least a spike that you can use to your advantage, especially when you get into field goal range. Love and the boys kind of just walked up to the line very slowly, very nonchalant. They had to kick a 45 yarder. I would have, we talked about the kicking problems, I would have felt much more comfortable with like a 30 something yard field goal, and that they weren't trying all too hard for that, I don't think. So I kind of want to hear your thoughts on that, as well as the special teams as a whole, because that punt return unit has just, I have no idea what's going on. So I want to hear your thoughts on both of those things as well.
The punt stuff, you can't muff a punt. That's got to be rule number one. If you're the return man, or if you're one of the gunners on the side, you can't be running into your man like that. You know the ball might drop at your feet. That's got to be rule one of being on that line. I don't know how that happens. It's the same type of play as if they threw a 60-yard bomb play on fourth down. Just can't be having that.
Mm-hmm.
Going back to the last drive of the game, I completely agree. It looked like they were playing for the field goal the whole time. It looked like they were playing for a 45, 50-yard field goal the whole time.
Yeah.
Like we had enough time to put some chunk plays together, get out of bounds, run a little bit more action. We could have hit three more plays in there. And it ended up with Jordan Love almost throwing it away at the end. I did not love his second to last throw. I saw him lean back, chuck a deep one. I said, we got this far and we're still watching that same pass. I know sometimes it's worked out, but last week we talked about that's exactly when you want to throw the ball. They brought the house. He had a single on the outside. It might have
Yeah.
been single coverage, but this was not the time to throw that ball.
Especially when you're playing that soft and you're going slow up to the line of scrimmage. You're making that throw like things are urgent. Like that is a throw that needs to be made. No. They had like two conflicting ideas, and Love was like I said, the way Love was walking up to the line and then chucking it down the field to Dontavian Wicks going for the end zone. Those were two completely different ways to play the game, and I did not know what was going on. And Love had two more interceptions this game. He's had at least one every single game that he has played so far this year, which it's going to continue to be a conversation until it isn't. And a little bit of foreshadowing, we might be talking about that a little bit later with the turnovers. But I think overall, you take it. There are some things I hope the coaching staff looks in the mirror. And I do want to talk about Rich Bisaccia. He is a special teams coordinator for the Packers. He was an interim head coach for Las Vegas. For the Raiders, he actually helped them get to the playoffs at the end of the season when they fired John Gruden. A lot of people, he was very highly touted, very highly respected amongst the league. They thought he was the best special teams coordinator in all of football. And I think we can say it now. Ever since Bisaccia has gotten Green Bay, the special teams has heavily underperformed. I think you have a really solid special teams playmaker in Keyshawn Nixon, but there are so many fundamental things. And I think Jaden Reed returning any punts at any point is one of those fundamental things where, as a coaching staff, that just can't happen. He doesn't bring that much value added to your punt return game. And he's your most valuable player on offense, essentially, right behind Jordan Love. So I want to hear your thoughts a little bit, but my opinion here, I think there's been a lot of underperformance under Rich Bisaccia, and I think the blame kind of has to be pointed towards him.
It's definitely a little bit of blame towards him. I want to be a little bit hesitant to blaming him too much because he might be at the fault of the expectations. Because like you said, he came in, it was, you don't hear about big news special teams hires very often. He
Right.
got paid like it, he got treated like it, and he was supposed to make a difference. We got a guy, like you said, in Keyshawn Nixon. He's going to make plays wherever he goes. That guy's a stud. He's an electric player. He's explosive. He's fast. He's playing pretty decent DB right now as well. But it's pretty basic stuff. I mean, the special teams unit, we haven't had good kickers. The coverage hasn't been fantastic. We're muffing punts. It does go back to Bisaccia. So 100%.
We'll
Defense
see how
covers
that
up a lot.
develops.
Yeah, defense covers up a lot for him. It has been, but
Mm-hmm.
that's the type of stuff that's going to win you and lose you games when you get into crunch time, when you get into championship games, when you get into the playoffs. You can't be missing kicks. You can't be getting up. You can't be muffing punts like that. That's the small details that are really going to take a team over the top.
Yeah, I think so as well. And you hope that there can be improvements. And I'm not saying that this is a situation where you have to fire a guy, or even if it was, Green Bay absolutely wouldn't, because we dealt with Joe Barry for 3 years when I think he should have been fired for two of them consecutively. Every single week we had that same conversation. So it's not like there's going to be any changes, but it is a conversation to have where Versace and his unit as a whole, they just got to be better at those little fundamental things, not muffing it, having good coverage, and honestly, that kick that McManus made, I don't know if you watched the video back. That was a terrible snap that
It
Daniel
was
Whelan
bad.
had to take across his body and get that. Like that was a awesome play by Daniel Whelan, which will not get talked about by any media anywhere. But Daniel Whelan, as the kick holder, saved that game single handedly by getting the long snap to the spot where it needed to be. But there's
That's a
just
great mention, 100%.
yes, like we talk about Daniel Whelan, of course, he's a great punter too. He is so valuable to this team. I love Whelan. I could talk about him all the time. Kicking is it's a very particular thing. It is an art, and when it is done right, it is a beautiful, beautiful thing. Just don't mess it up. That's really all that you have to do in the NFL. So overall, very solid win for Green Bay. They'll be heading to Duval to play the Jacksonville Jaguars, who are struggling pretty heavily. They beat a pretty bad New England team in London this past week, but I think Green Bay should feel pretty comfortable going into this game.
They should feel pretty comfortable. This is a game that you want to see a blowout in. You don't want to see this
Mm-hmm.
be a 3 point game. You don't want to see a 5 point game. Green Bay is going to get like an 8.5 number, and they should cover this 100%.
Yeah, I think so too. And I'll talk about this game, of course, as we move on over the week, but this is a huge favor game for Green Bay. And I do want to touch on the Wisconsin Badgers this past weekend. This is a very good win at Northwestern at that Lakeshore temporary stadium. Really weird vibes you got going on there at Northwestern right now, which you kind of always have to be hesitant when Wisconsin plays Northwestern. There's usually some funky things that happen in this game, but the Badgers took care of business, able to get a big 23-3 victory. The defense was spectacular for the third consecutive week. The offense was okay. They did their job to the point. Braden Locke, the quarterback, was 14 for 24, 160 yards. He had a touchdown and another interception. But Tawi Walker is kind of bringing himself into a pretty decent conversation here for the Wisconsin Badgers. 23 carries, 126 yards. But overall, I think a very solid win for Wisconsin as they get set for a pretty big matchup next week against Penn State.
Yeah, big game coming up. And these Badgers, they might be rolling. I mean, we haven't had three extremely tough opponents in the past couple of weeks, but 52-6, 42-7, 23-3. These boys are kind of hot right now. I mean, it's been
Mhm.
Purdue, Rutgers, and Northwestern, so it's nobody to write home about. But this is a Penn State that has looked a little bit vulnerable. They only beat Bowling Green by 7 points. Now Badgers sneak past Western Kentucky, so we're not talking too loud. But they also look vulnerable against USC. So USC had them on the ropes, and that's a team that again, Badgers, I think we lost by 17, but that was a close game up until we really gave it
Yeah.
away fourth there. So this Penn State team, their secondary looks a little weak. I think it's been a lot of efficient quarterback play against them. So I think if the Badgers can lean into that, it might be a fun day to be in Madison this weekend.
I think so as well. That's going to be a Saturday night game. It's going to be prime time. This
Mm.
could be one of those games that we talk about. It could also be one of those ones that you want to forget. I will say that. Like they do have some momentum coming into this game, and as you said, Penn State. I think there's a possibility they could be exposed. They've had some really close games earlier this year as the season has gone along. I think Wisconsin could take advantage of something and do something really cool here, but we haven't really seen that big win out of a Luke Fickle squad yet. So we're kind of still waiting for it. If they can get it done this week, though, that entirely changes the conversation about the coaching staff and what's happening in Madison. Because what they're doing with Braden Locke, and I kind of talked bad on him pretty bad after that Alabama game. He did not
Yeah.
look like he belonged in a Division 1 program at all. But now he's kind of carrying this offense a little bit. He's moving the ball down the field. Yeah, he's got about an interception every game, but I think what the offense has been able to do after losing who you expected to be your starting quarterback all year, I think you kind of have to give some props to what that coaching staff has been able to do as much as we were questioning them early in the season.
We saw this happen with the Packers when Love went down. You simplify things a little bit, you get back to just a good offense, don't go too crazy with everything, and you might just win some games. Now I think it definitely helped him out that he did have a couple, a pretty easy schedule as he eased into
Yeah.
things. So he's definitely going to be tested on a level that he hasn't been this Saturday night. the kid's looking warm. He's looking efficient. They slowed things down for him a little bit. Like you said, Tal, he's looking awesome bat in the backfield right now.
Mhm.
So I think we're going to be tested this Saturday, and we're gonna find out if this team can do it or not. Because this is a Penn State team that's going to be a top five seed. They're three right now. That's going to be a huge game right here. And like you said, we got a shot to do this thing.
If your front seven plays as well as they have been playing recently, I think you give yourself a shot against almost anybody. Like they have figured something out on that defensive line and the linebackers where they're playing lights out. And we'll see if they can continue that at Madison Camp Randall. It'll be a primetime game on Saturday. So this will be our first official conversation here about the NBA. We've made some previous comments and whatnot, but it was Sam's idea that we gotta make some predictions here. So we'll start the conversation off with the awards. So at the top here, the first prediction that both Sam and I are going to make is most valuable player award. I will let Sam kick it off here as I think you watch the NBA a little bit more than I do, maybe a lot of it, but I will let Sam take this away. He probably has a little bit better insight. But also, I know you're as big of a Bucks fan as you are with the flag hanging in the back there. Is there any bias that might be influencing these selections here? Because I will just say I have no Bucks bias in any of my selections here as we're gonna try to predict the NBA season coming up. But Sam, you could take it away for most valuable player.
There's a little bit of bias in these predictions, not a ton, not in the MVP. I've got Shea Gilgeous-Alexander winning the MVP this year. Hey, I think this Thunder team might be a 62 win team. These guys they're good, they're deep, they're shooters, they're defenders. They've got an all-star. They've got a stud. They've got Shea. I think Chet's going to be awesome. I think Shea's going to be averaging 38 and 8, maybe 30, 10 and 6 or something like that on the best team in the league. I think he's a great bet for MVP this year.
Yeah, you kind of I one of us stole it from the other one, but I have SGA as well. And my biggest reasoning is because I think your players that are going to be in the MVP conversation are going to be those same players. You're going to have Giannis in there. You're going to have Jokic in there. And as we've seen before, and we've talked about a little bit before, there is a such thing as voter fatigue. They like to keep things new. They like to keep things fresh. So if those guys had like an identical season from last year, if they can replicate those exact same numbers and exact same seasons this year, I bet the voters pick SGA. So that's kind of where I stand right now. That's my reasoning for it. But I think you're right on the OKC stuff. I'll kind of hold off on my extra comments on there because we might see them a little bit further in my predictions. Now we will go rookie of the year. I'll kick this one off. I have Dalton Necht. I know right now the favorite is Zach Edey, but I think Necht is finding himself in a very solid situation in LA. He could be a pretty solid contributor for a team that's aging. They're going to need a little bit more youth to step into that lineup and be effective. And I think he's one of the top players in all of college basketball last year at Tennessee. He's a really, really solid all around player. And I think he's got a good opportunity with some aging players over there in LA to make a big difference for a team that should be pretty solid.
Yeah, that's a huge point because opportunity is everything when it comes to these rookie of the years. Who's going to get the minutes. And hey, Connect had an awesome game the other night. I think he scored like 20 of the last 22 or 24 points for the Lakers
Yeah.
in a closeout overtime game. So I wasn't super high on him. Wanted to kind of see how he developed, but he's a little bit of an older rookie as well.
Mhm.
I believe so. He should have a little bit easier coming in. And when you're playing with somebody like LeBron, if you're good, if you're talented, the ball will find you.
Yep.
For my rookie of the year, I do have Zach Edey. Like you said, opportunity is everything. I think he's a guy who's just big enough and he can come out and just average some good numbers. If he's putting up 13 and 11 as a rookie, add 2.5 blocks a game. I think that'll be good enough to do it. I'm not sure about the volume that Connect will be, perhaps playing with. I think in a lot of closeout lineups, they are going to have Reeves on the floor instead of him. So Connect might have an awesome season, averaging 13, 4, and 2, showing a lot of promise. But if
Yeah.
Edey's putting up double type of numbers with some good blocks a game, that award should be his. And on a Grizzlies team, and he might be the starting center on a Grizzlies team that's winning 50 games this year too.
Right. Yeah. And he might be that first one where a lot of people in college ball, you see a big man like that dominate where they say, oh, he's not going to do anything like that in the NBA, which no, he's not going to average 30 points in the NBA, but could be one of those guys that we see as a long-term mainstay. I think. I think he could be one of those first big guys that we have that conversation about to do it. We'll move on here. I think this one is pretty easy for me. The most improved player, I think the favorite is the overall favorite. I'll let Sam take this away, but I have a feeling that we're going to be on the same page here as well as the rest of the nation.
I wonder. I've got Jaden Ivey.
Oh, okay. I take that back. Never mind. It's not 100%.
No, I think he's had a really good preseason. I'm might eat these words, and it feels weird to say. I'm a little bit higher on these Pistons than I think most people are. They added a little bit of 3-point shooting. They added Beasley. They added Hardaway. And between Cade Cunningham and Jaden Ivey, we know these are two very, very talented players, but they've never had space to move at all. They've never had shootings on this Pistons team. These Pistons teams have been bad.
Yeah.
Tobias Harris, he's not what he used to be, and I don't even think he ever was what anybody thought he was. But he's a decent player. He's coming back home to Detroit. I think these guys are all going to have a little bit more motion. And Ivy was only averaging, I think, 15 a game last year. So his stats were low enough where he can have that significant jump if he gets up to 23 and a half. If he starts scoring 24 points a night, and the Pistons aren't bottom of the barrel team if they're in the play-in conversation. I think Ivy's definitely going to be the most improved player conversation.
And what I have here is probably who you would think I would pick, and I have Wembanyama. I think where
Mm.
he was last year, like he could be one of those generational Hall of Fame talents. Last year was a very good rookie season for Wemby. I think there's a next step, and I'm gonna put my chips in for someone who I think has the highest ceiling, which Wembanyama might have the higher ceiling than anybody we've ever seen in the NBA. So that's where my chips are gonna go, and that's a Spurs team that I mean, it's not going to be hard for them to perform better. That like they were pretty bad last year. That team played a lot worse than I think that they actually were. So there's just going to be an improved team there, I think overall. And at the head of that is going to be Wembanyama, and that's why he's my most improved player pick.
Just
Now
Chris
this
Paul
is
being
where
around here is going to give him love too.
right, yeah, that's huge. I think they could be a playoff team. I think there's definitely a possibility there that the Spurs could sneak in there at the end. Now we start have that conversation about more of the team stuff and what goes along. So we'll go right all the way to the top. Who is going to win the NBA Finals? I'll give mine first, as kind of alluded to this before. That this OKC Thunder team, they're young, they're hungry, they got three guys I think that are all superstars, and I think it's kind of just written in the stars that there's going to be one special season for this Thunder team, and I'm just going to put it in for them right here. I think OKC has the opportunity to do something special, and they're my prediction to win the finals this year.
Were they beaten?
That's I don't have that. I did not look at that. I just have OKC as it gets a little bit interesting. As I'll
Cody, I
take
got
a
the Bucks in six.
okay.
I got the Bucks in six. Hey, these guys, this Bucks team is talented. They know their window is small. I've seen too much out of Giannis, too much out of Dame, and these aren't ordinary superstars. These are not ego-filled superstars. These are, you look at a little personality. These guys are driven. I love the chemistry between these two. It's gonna get better. Last year was a tumultuous year, for Dame, and then we didn't even see them healthy in the playoffs. The talent is through the roof. They're gonna take it slow. Um, Doc might try to lose them some games. I think Giannis and Dame are just too good right now. I got them taking out the Thunder in 6 games. And I got
Okay.
Giannis winning the finals MVP.
Okay. Yeah, and I have SGA as that's just easy for OKC, but you're not gonna like me for this. I have Boston in the Eastern Conference. I think that team,
Get
no
it?
one really. I mean, they were kind of favorites going into last year. I mean, you had the Nuggets that you had to get through. They had a bit of an easy road, as you want to call it, but I think they're built up, and I think that they're just better and maybe a little bit younger than the Bucks. Of course, I want to root for the Bucks, but I see age, I see an old coach as well that didn't want really to be involved in the NBA and then was kind of asked to come out of retirement. And I would love to see you have two of the greatest players of all time on the same roster, but everybody just continues to get a little bit older, and health will continue to be a conversation for Giannis when it comes down to the stretch. Same with Chris Middleton and a lot of those other pieces. They'll have to see if those guys that they brought in are going to be able to take them an extra step forward. But a year where you've had 2 consecutive years where Giannis got hurt, he only gets a year older. You just hope that he can continue to stay healthy. But as chances say it, that's not the greatest of possibilities. And I think that'll be the biggest thing to overcome, which I talked a little bit last week. And Giannis understands that his biggest goal, he said, was to stay healthy for the whole season, really, and to play well down the stretch, because this is a team that has had the opportunity to go make a finals run, and the last 2 years have laid an egg essentially because Giannis was not there when it came to the playoffs. So
I
we're
think
coming down.
Giannis playing in these big time games, it feels a lot like to me when I used to watch Aaron Rodgers on a 2 minute drive.
Yeah.
I've seen it work out too many times. I've just seen it work. I've seen him be too dominant when he's healthy. I've seen him run over people. I've seen him
Oh
put
yeah.
50 ball, drop a 50 ball and hit all his free throws in a closeout finals game. If he's on the floor, if Rodgers has the ball with 2 minutes left, I'm not going to bet against it. I can't. I've seen it happen too many times. And so as long as he's healthy, you're not going to find me betting against Giannis. I think he's the best player in the world. I know Jokic puts up great numbers. Giannis is too dominant on both sides of the floor. Maybe a
And
little bit of
that's the
bias,
only
but
way he's been knocked out of the playoffs, right? Was him getting injured and his team just not
um,
having him on the floor.
other than losing Chris in Game 6, when we should have beat
Yeah.
Boston, I think in 2021 or something like that.
Yeah,
That was
yeah,
tough.
that's right.
But Chris was also balling, and that was a skinny roster. We didn't have a whole lot of depth then.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No,
Um,
it's a team that could do it, and we'll see. And I think it's going to be a really exciting season. So we're coming down on time here a little bit. So this is a new segment that we're going to try out. As Sam and I, we're going to do kind of rapid fire questions, as this segment will be called the cheese grater. You put it in, you see what comes out. So we'll go back and forth. Sam, I'll start. I'll ask you one. You have a short little answer, and then you fire right back at me.
all
So
right.
question number one here for the cheese grater. Are you worried about Jordan Love throwing an interception every single game of the season so far?
I'm not worried about Jordan Love throwing every interception. Like I've said a handful of times, I like some adversity. I want him to see his mistakes. They got to start getting cleaned up, though. World Series coming up. Who you got?
Who do I have? Oh, I don't like this. Either way, this is I'll have a question about this as well. Um, I haven't looked too deep into it. Baseball's honestly a coin flip, and where things go, I'll go with the team that hasn't been there for the longer time. The New York Yankees haven't been there, and they haven't won it since 2009. They got 27 rings on their way to 28, I believe. I think New York's going to take it.
Like a lot of power on that lineup.
Yes, they do. And Giancarlo Stanton might be the greatest postseason hitter that we have ever seen. Question two is Aaron Rodgers' hopes of a second ring over?
No.
No. You
Seen him
think he's
run the
got time?
table. I think he's got time. I've seen him run the table before. I've seen him say RELAX. Now that might have been a decade ago. Um, Look, you plug in Devontae, it's not going to work week 1. Hassan Reddick shows up next week. They are going to have to go on a run here.
Like generational.
Yeah,
Like,
so it's going to have to happen. But hey, this team is talented enough. And I don't think it's out of the question that he plays next year either. I was thinking about
mhm.
that. I thought about having that as a question for you here, but there's a lot going on with that. I think Rodgers has 2 more shots at getting a ring.
All right.
Uh, what's one Brewers offseason move you want to see happen this summer or this?
Uh, I would like to see Devin Williams get traded. I think that you're going to be able to get value back from him if you can get a solid piece, just one piece like you did last year with either a DL Hall or a Joey Ortiz. If you can bring in somebody to maybe be a young guy to fill in at third base, I think that's going to be valuable. I don't think there's a lot on the free agent market, and I don't know what you're going to be able to do trade wise. But I think Devin Williams is the biggest piece that I see being dealt, and I think it's just the time to do it. I wish that that wasn't the case, but the Brewers being in the market they are, Devin Williams isn't going to be here in 2 years. And I don't think it's essential that he's in the bullpen for a World Series run next year. So I'd like to see him be dealt. Uh, Chances for Wisconsin versus Penn State. I want a percentage number here. It's at home, prime time,
40.
40. Ooh, that
40%.
that's That's a good number.
It's
That's a
not in our
pretty high
favor.
number.
It's not in our favor. But like I said, this Penn State looks vulnerable. I think, I feel it in the air. We got good energy going on right now. Badgers are hot. Penn State's vulnerable. It's going down in Madison. You know that place is going to be loud. Camp Randall's going to be rocking. Um, Again, not over 50, but we got a shot.
All right.
What's one thing that you would look for to make this Bucks season a success?
I think the only way you look at it as success is winning the whole thing. Like, and then this will add on for my question actually that I have is this year do or die for the Bucks? I think it is. I think it's getting to that point.
I think we got 2 years on these contracts. So I think Dame is getting a little bit older. We're gonna see what happens with his body this year. So, but he's put a lot of work. I saw he's been working out with David Goggins. Love it.
That's
So
good. That's big.
longevity
Who's
in
going to
athletes.
carry the boat?
Yeah, who's carrying the boats? I love it.
Going to carry
No,
the
I
boat.
think I think the Bucks have a good 2 3 years window at this, but Horst has got to be pulling some strings, and he continues to do so. The addition of DeLon Wright, Torian Prince, this summer, and Gary Trent
Mm-hmm.
Jr. If he's going to keep being John Horst like that, Bucks are going to be here for at least 2 3 years.
Yeah.
What's one NFC team that you do not want to see in the first round?
Oh, so that means we'd have to see them in the first round. Uh, Probably the Minnesota Vikings.
Really?
I think Green Bay's gonna finish ahead of them. So I'm just thinking of a wild card team that I think is gonna be a tough out. I
Sure.
and Minnesota played really tough yesterday. That it's a tough squad. I think that they're doing a lot of good things over there. I don't think they're gonna win the division. I think Detroit is. And when it comes to that, I mean, if I think that I think the Packers are going to that's it doesn't even work that way. I don't even know. But I think Minnesota would be a tough first team. I mean, you'd hate to face Detroit as well. I'm not as scared of San Francisco. I'll put it that way. I think the East stinks. That's where I stand with the NFC. I think your best teams right now are in the NFC North. So you don't want to face the North, whoever that is. That is going to be my answer. My final question for the cheese grater is Dodgers Yankees good for baseball?
I hate to say it, it's good for baseball. I'm watching. This is awesome. It's Shohei. It's New York. It breaks me. You don't want to see this over and over, and we really don't all that much. But this is what it's all about. We come down to the World Series, and it's LA, it's New York. I'm gonna be tuning in. This for this year, for the Stars, for what's going on, for everything that's led up. For Shohei's first playoff appearance. For Stanton crushing, for the game that we just watched. The Yankees play 2 games ago when there's a lead change against the Guardians, a lead change in the eighth,
Mm-hmm.
the ninth, and the 10th. For everything leading up into this World Series. Yeah, this is good for baseball.
I think so.
Uh, who's your MVP in the NFL as of right now, and then who's it going to be at the end of the season?
This is a very good question. You know what? Oh, this feels silly. I'm not going. I think it's Jordan Love. I think as many touchdowns as he's thrown, he's got all the interceptions. Yes, Green Bay won 2 games with Malik Willis, but I think everybody else has just been flat out bad. Maybe Derrick Henry. Actually, Derrick Henry. No, that's going to be my answer. I think Derrick Henry is your most valuable player right now, but I think Jordan Love is going to be in that conversation. If he can just limit the interceptions a little bit, this feels like the year. Like MVP shouldn't be all that difficult. I don't think Mahomes isn't playing great. I always think Lamar Jackson's ceiling is pretty low. Like the only times that Lamar wins it is when you don't have another player light it up for 45 or 50 touchdowns through the air. So right now I have Derrick Henry. I think Jordan Love will be there at the end of the year because even in his bad games, he's throwing 2 or 3 touchdowns. Like he's a superstar. And I think this team's really solid around him.
I love it. I got to give it to Jaden Daniels for the MVP right now.
Okay,
Turning
I like it.
Daniels around has been, really fun to see.
All right. I will cut you off. We are really short on time. Give me your headline in one sentence.
Tucker, I barely know her. Kraft shines. Pack dominate in Duval.
I'd like the alliteration. I have Dontavion Shines in Duval.